actually. All right. So let's start with. Right. So Pete, name a technique from NLP from the prac.
Perceptual positions.
Cool. So I don't teach the prac anymore, but I was used to tell a joke that one lady sat and listened to the menu, like the table of contents, at the beginning of the 7 days, and I'd mentioned, day 5, we're going to learn perceptual positions, and when we got to day 5 and I put this thing on the board and I was talking through perceptual position, she looked really disappointed. I was like, why are you disappointed? She goes, I thought we were going to learn NLP sexual positions, like there was going to be some kind of amazing sexual kind of thing, like in some tantra or something. She was really disappointed. I was gutted for her. So yes, perceptual positions. Lovely. Okay. So what would make you guys think, as you were coaching somebody, that perceptual positions would be the right technique to use? Any ideas?
I'm thinking if there's any kind of conflict, potentially.
Between
people in some kind of relationship, whether it's a work relationship, a home relationship, where there's maybe some kind of disconnect.
Great. Yes, and I think this is important. Where there's conflict in relationships because of something, I think that's the important thing, because there's often conflict in relationships. But it's useful to resolve conflict in relationships where you do not understand the other person's map of the world, perhaps, really good when you've got somebody who says, like, I'm in the right, they're in the wrong. Yeah. So thinks they're right and the other person is wrong. Can you do it with more than one person at a time? So if they say, oh, my whole family, they're all the same.
I would say yes, but you may want to do it without verbal responses. So you might want to do it where people just think about the answers internally.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do it with as many people as you want to, and you can actually just keep position 3 as one position, because it's still an objective bystander. And then your own position, you just literally have those people standing as person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at once. It's always nicer if there's just, a nice simple one person at a time. But there's no rules about it. Of course you can do more than one person in the second position. So good. Okay. So is there anything else in the client's language that might, like, examples that you can think of where perceptual positions, and you do a perceptual positions rather than a timeline? Let's go through timeline. So let's go through remove negative emotion timeline technique. So what would a client say that would make you think we're going to release negative emotion? But removing it, extracting it all.
I'm just thinking out loud. So maybe some kind of doubt in what they've said. Maybe they're doubting their own abilities, or they have a fixed mindset on a certain event or a certain thing that's happened to them, with no obvious rational reason why.
Oh, okay. Can you give me an example, just so I'm really clear? For example,
maybe it's I'm no good at whatever. I've never been any good at that. Haven't been able to. Actually, maybe that's not the best example. Maybe it's I've never been very academic. Everybody's always told me I've not been academic.
Yeah.
So there's no point me studying for that because I'm going to fail.
Brilliant. So with release negative emotion and releasing limiting decision, they are kind of two sides of the same coin, because for every negative emotion, there's probably a limiting decision that's causing that emotion. And with every limiting decision, there's probably a feeling that you get when you think about it being true. So they're mostly two sides of the same coin. However, one will usually present itself above the other. So if somebody is aware that they just have this feeling of doubt, and it's like the feeling is what they focus on. So, you know, oh, I'm all set to go and do this course, or I'm all set to go and do this speech or whatever. And then all I get is this just feeling of doubt, of worry, fear. And the feeling is what they focus on. Then you do release negative emotion, because that's the one that's presented. If in your case, Pete, they're saying things like, well, you know, I think about doing this, but then I just doubt myself because, well, I've never been, you know, an academic, and I keep telling myself, no, there's no point doing it. And they're more aware of the self-talk and the thought, then you do release limiting decision. So that's really how to tell the difference between those two techniques. And I always say to somebody, if somebody is presenting with a limiting emotion, you don't have to, you can do a lot of talking and asking questions about it. At the end of the day, though, the feeling is the issue. Just do a timeline, right? We were going to talk about testing and future pacing in a minute. And so all you really need to do is make sure you've got enough examples so that you can test afterwards that it's dealt with. But otherwise, crack on. If you've got the limiting belief, crack on. You don't necessarily need to ask loads of other questions, even though you can. If someone's presenting with something, just you can go, you know, provided that it, you know, you feel it's the right thing to do, go for it. Okie dokie. So if a person presents with what about what do we say when we say an unwarranted emotional response? Why is that important?
To me, it would indicate that there's no obvious evidence to that effect. It's just a belief. Right.
So the unwarranted probably, yes, absolutely. So the limiting belief, when somebody says I'm actually a really unkind person, and you kind of, you say to them, is there any evidence that, oh yeah, tons, I'm awful. I'm really horrible to everybody that I meet. Okay, so that's just a belief. Is it disempowering that you have to stay that way? Is the belief that it's just who you are that's the issue? So you might need to reframe, okay, what belief is the disempowering belief there? Because obviously there might be a lot of evidence that it's true. And so the belief that you want to change is that that's just who you are, and that you can't be a nice person. Like, what's preventing you from just being kinder then? Right? And then they would pop out with probably the limiting decision or belief at that point. So yes, so if the person presents with those sorts of beliefs, if there's rationale behind it, then you need to dig a little bit deeper. If there's not really any rationale behind it, but it just feels true, it's just like, well, yeah, I know everybody tells me, but I don't feel it. I can't access that. I can't feel that that's true, definitely. that is a limiting decision. So that's kind of the unwarranted aspect. And with feelings, it's always this, the main reason for timeline is those unwarranted levels of emotion. So if somebody is genuinely feeling sad because, you know, their favorite thing got broken, well, that's an appropriate response. You don't need to timeline that because that's appropriate. It's when it's unwarranted levels of sadness because their favorite thing got broken, or they can't let go of it, or they can't move past it. That's probably when, okay, this isn't about that. It's about something much earlier. So yeah, a warranted response is fine. People will usually move past or through a warranted response to something. You know, somebody getting mugged, it's actually warranted to get angry at the time. It could be even warranted to get angry afterwards too. And have all kinds of emotional reactions during and after, all warranted, because the event kind of, it's an appropriate response to the event. But yes, anything in there that's like, whoa, that is big. That is big. That's too big for this. It must be old. So those are the things that people would present with. What other techniques are there? What techniques can you think of? Perceptual positions, timeline, release negative emotions, timeline.
Parts integration.
Ooh, my favourite.
Oh, that's the one I was trying to remember the name of.
I suppose you haven't just got the packet manual out. Look through the contents page.
I know what it is. I couldn't remember the name of it.
I love it. It's probably my favourite, parts integration. So what's parts integration designed for?
It's when you have two things that are kind of pulling in opposite directions, but they might have the same intention. So it's kind of neutralizing that being torn and bringing them into the same place so that you can just get on with it.
Yes.
I was going to say resolving internal conflicts.
Exactly.
That's beautifully put.
Great. Yeah. Great. So parts integration is at its best when it's used for resolving inner conflict. And inner conflict arises because part of you wants something and part of you wants something else. A lot of people will get confused with parts integration. And the reason why they don't get a great integration is because they've started it without properly eliciting the parts. So, for example, you'll get things like, well, I really want to go home and watch TV, but I should go to the gym. Well, that's not an internal conflict, right? That's because if you ask somebody who has an internal conflict, okay, yeah, but which one do you really want to do? And they're like, oh my God. But I think I should go to the gym. Okay, well, that's a limiting belief then, or that's something else. It's only really a conflict when you're pulled in two different directions. If it's a I should, but, then that's more of a limiting belief. So I really want to go home and watch TV, but you know what? I really want to go to the gym and get fit. I really want to go and do that. I know that that's what I want, and I really want to do this, and I can't do both. And it has to be that kind of level of torn, like I want this and I want this, and I can't have both. Rather than I want this and I don't, I don't want something, or but I think I should, or I don't believe I can. So usually that's in more the belief side of things. However, if a rookie was to say, cool, okay, we'll just take the part that thinks you should go to the gym and the part of you that wants to go home, and you chunked up on those, you may get a resolution. just because there may be a part of you that is in charge of what you should do, like the future you and the now you, right? I really should go to bed, but I really want to watch this TV program. You could end up integrating two parts of yourself kind of accidentally. So it's not, I always say parts integration is the one thing, if you're not sure, just go for it, because you'll find out so much from doing it that it won't be wasted, even if you don't get brilliant integration. You'll still hear every intention on either side. The client will have huge awareness of what's really going on. It'll be really good. You only get that great resolution though when you've recognized the parts, and those parts want different things, and you recognize they both want the same thing ultimately. And then it doesn't matter what you do, as long as the highest intention is met. So instead of two paths towards that intention, you actually suddenly realize there might be infinite numbers of ways that you could get that highest intention, and any of them are good. So if it's about having more energy or living a better life, sometimes it might be appropriate to go home and watch the TV, and other times it's appropriate to go to the gym, right? It's your highest intention, once you recognize it, will help you make those momentary decisions. All right. You get better conflicts, by the way, better resolution of conflicts when you go the person I am when I want that, and the person I am when I want that, when you go to identity level parts, if you can. Phenomenal shifts you get if that's what you do. Otherwise, I really want to go to the party, really want to go home. You'll get a superficial resolution of that issue, but you won't get that sort of secondary level shift that will have a knock-on effect on lots of other environments. So, all right. And what might the client say that makes you think past integration? What do they often do?
Is it some of it language, like using words like but? So I want this, but I want that can be a signal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because as soon as there's a block to something, you can be listening out for what's the block. Is it a limiting belief? Is it a conflict? Yeah. And nobody's expecting you to know instantaneously when the client says something. You've got time to ask more questions. But the way that most of the time it's parts is because the hands will come in. So if you can see the client, they'll somehow gesture that, part of me, or on the one hand, on the other hand, and they usually just give it away. And it's usually, they're not aware that they're doing it. So one hand, the other hand. One side of the body, head moves to the one side, head moves to the other side, usually indicates a parts conflict. Any other techniques that you can think of?
Anchoring and collapsing anchors.
What was the first one?
Anchoring.
Oh, anchoring. Sorry, I thought you said something else. Well, let's look at them as two different things then. So what would make you think, we need to do some anchoring here? What's that for?
Would be that somebody has some apprehension or a fear of something that's coming up.
Great. So if that was me and you literally just said, I've got some apprehension or fear coming up about something, that would be collapsing anchors, yeah?
Okay, yeah. So maybe they have something coming up in the future that they may be a little bit nervous about, and they want to be more confident.
Great. So you may, as part of that, you may end up collapsing anchors first and then anchoring. Because if there's any unresourceful emotion connected to something, if you install this really amazing resource anchor and say, wow, look at this is an amazing, confident anchor. When you get on stage and those butterflies kick in, fire off your resource anchor. Well, if they're really nervous and they fire off their confident anchor, first of all, it's got to collapse the worry, and then the rest of it, if there's any left, will get them to a higher plane. So I would utilize the time with you as a coach on resolving any fear, worry, thoughts, anything unresourceful on what's coming up until they're completely neutral. And then with the time left, I'd say now let's create a resource anchor that you can use whilst we mentally rehearse doing it. And then they've got however long to keep mentally rehearsing doing it beautifully, brilliantly, amazingly with this kick-ass resource anchor. So by the time they get there, they don't need to use it because they've already seen it going well 100 times. So where would you use anchoring on its own then?
So is it more like building resourceful states? It's building on positives rather than trying to counteract something that might be.
Yeah, resource. And remember, what is a resourceful state? So can anger be a resourceful state?
In the right situation, I'd say yes.
Right, exactly. So in the right situation, you may need a different emotion. So therefore, anchoring is at its best when you're saying, let me have access to a range of emotions quickly that I may need at different times in my life. So when you come home from work and you're trying to chill, maybe your mind's racing a little bit, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm already trying to switch off, so I'm on the way to it, but I want to get there a bit quicker. So it's not like you're in an unresourceful state, but you want to go more fully into the appropriate state. So anchoring as a whole is about moving to different resourceful states, not necessarily from unresourceful ones though, because then you lose some of the power. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you would have to stack it again because you'd have lost some of it. I know that if you have resourceful states for, there's a very different vibe when you're on stage doing a motivational event. You might want not to start at level 5,000 with a group that's all sat down terrified about what you're going to do to them. You might want to fire off your fully crazy motivated anchor about 30 minutes into the event when everyone's a bit more relaxed and a bit more, so you might want to fire off your, calm and centered, and then build through a set of anchors towards, level 5,000 to help you change states. Actors, when somebody says they can't cry on demand, I'm like, oh, I can. On my trainers training, they said, right, pick something just as an exercise, pick something to teach people to do. And I taught my group how to cry on demand because it's so easy. And I just thought, I'll teach that because it's brilliant. So, but if you've got an anchor, it's even easier, isn't it? That's just for acting or for different states. If you're not good at getting into giggly, light-hearted states with your kids and you want to be more playful, then having an anchor for that would really help to do that. So I think anchoring is very much more about utilizing. Am I sharing my? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I was thinking, am I just writing this for myself?
Just talking to yourself, yeah.
Talking to myself, writing to myself, having a lovely time. So you can see it. That's good. So yeah, utilizing resourceful states where you might want help accessing those states. And also as well, biochemically, there's a really good reason to practice anchoring. So every 6 weeks or so, your cells go through this, not all at once, they're constantly doing it, but your body is constantly regenerating itself, and new cells are occurring whilst other ones are dying. And biochemically, you have these receptor sites on all of your cells that can attach to, let's say, the emotion of anger, the emotion of sadness, the emotion of joy. And whatever emotion you feel most often, when your cells divide and create new cells, daughter cells, there will be more neurotransmitters, there'll be more connections available, receptor sites available for the emotions you feel most frequently. What that means is that you need to feel less and less anger in your body to feel the same level of anger in your body. So there needs to be less and less of a kind of neurotransmitter for all the cells to be able to feel it. So you get really good at the states that you live in. So it eventually doesn't take very much, like, somebody say, well, you've got short fuse. It just doesn't take very much in the end. You're really good at it. So one of the ways that I always use anchoring with my clients is I say, think of the emotions that you want to feel most frequently in your life. Currently, the ones you do feel most frequently in life, you're physiologically programmed to feel now. So over a period of 6 weeks, if you listen to the anchoring MP3 that you give them, and you literally just anchor joy, unconditional love, and you go through those processes of remembering positive and lovely memories, of experiencing those emotions, of firing off those anchors maybe later on in the day, by the end of that 6 weeks, your body has now regenerated to a point where you don't need to do as much to feel joy, unconditional love, and so on. And it's so important because it's so easy. Do you see what I mean? It's so to sort of hack your physiology. I always say, like with Ricky Gervais, when you watch earlier videos of him where he just can't stop laughing, have you seen those where he's physically having to try and find things that are funny because he's like addicted to giggling? There's interviews where he's just not non-stop giggling. And I kind of often thought to myself, I wonder if he's so programmed for giggling that he has to actually come up with things to do, quite often horrible things to his co-workers, because I have to find something to laugh at because I need to laugh. I can feel it in my body. So yeah, I think that's how I would suggest using anchoring. I think that's a really positive way for you personally as well as your clients to use it. Cool, okay. What other techniques do you know of? Central positions, day 1, day 2. Obviously these are interventions, not techniques. I'm going to put interventions because obviously rapport is a technique, but it's not an intervention.
So I've run out of the proper names, but I can think of a couple of things.
Go on, see if we can find the names.
There was one where I'm going to say reframing, but it isn't, because I think that was something else. It's where you think of something that maybe you say you like eating chocolate and you don't want to anymore. Yeah. So you think, where is it in relation to you? What size is it? What does it smell like? Yeah, that sort of thing. And then you do the complete opposite.
Great. All right. So shifting some modalities, really, really great. Now at MasterPrac, we tend to incorporate all of these sort of slightly smaller interventions, and we use them in different ways later on. So some modalities, when we teach some modalities, we kind of have to come up with a technique so you can see how profound it is to just shift them. And I know plenty of practitioners that have gone away and done a like to dislike on someone, and they've never eaten that thing again. You know, I still get the giggles when someone goes like 15 years on and they're like, oh Jess, you know what, I still haven't eaten ice cream since that time you did that, which always makes me giggle because that's fantastic, that's brilliant. So some modality changes are very powerful, especially if they are in line with what the client wants. If they are doing it just to see if it works but they don't want to stop eating ice cream, it has less of an effect because it's very much just showing you the impact of some modalities. So it's less of an intervention and more of a demonstration of how some modalities are included in all of the techniques that we then use, and we don't really kind of refer back to them, but you can see that they're in there, make it bigger and brighter and so on. So yes, like to dislike, as part of some modality shift. You can do a some modality belief change as well. That's really nice. Again, another one where if the person is in alignment with letting go of the old belief, you can construct a new belief and put it where the old belief was. Really, really nice. Takes a while. There are certainly quicker techniques to do. Good. What have we got? Day 2. Well, reframing actually is an intervention, so we'll put that as a. I need to get another page. So what's reframing and what's it good for? What is it? If somebody said what they need a bit of reframing.
A different perspective on I guess the thought or belief.
Yep. So it's literally so by reframing, you can often have somebody look at something in a way that actually resolves the problem entirely or dissolves it. So they might have said, oh, so there isn't a problem then, because they've suddenly looked at something from a different perspective. For example, what's one? There's so many. This is the issue with doing them unconsciously, is that you don't tend to remember them consciously because they're just bread and butter. What's the one? I'm trying to think of one that I've had this week. Well, one of the common ones that we get is for example, when someone says, oh, well, I want to, I get a lot of clients that are trying to find their perfect partner, and they all always start out and say, well, I'm not gonna start dating yet. I'm going to get myself in shape, and, I'm going to get my life completely together, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time with myself and really get myself to a space that I'm really happy with myself. then I'm gonna meet the perfect person, and they'll find me instantly attractive and blah blah. And the reframe that I always have on that is, you may do more of that growth more quickly by being in a relationship than you could possibly do on your own. But also, you don't want to get yourself in shape before you find the love of your life. Right, because then you're always fighting a losing battle. You want to find someone who thinks you're awesome at your worst, and then what a lovely surprise if you then shift the other way. Look at all these lovely magazines that just love to tear strips off these poor celebrities that put on a pound or whatever on holiday, and yet the people that started off. What's his name? James, now famous in the US. James Corden, right? So there's never going to be a picture of him on the beach, like, oh, you know, look at his cellulite, because he was made famous, right, from, I think, was it the weight loss TV drama or whatever that originally, Fat Friends or something like that. So he, you know, he came onto your screens looking a certain way, so he's only ever going to get credit, right, for looking differently, for like looking buff or whatever. So I'm like, why make your life hard? Right? You don't want to go and get in shape and then be trying to maintain something because you trading standards, you know, you've sold yourself a particular, you know, way of looking, and you're only going to get older, so it's only going to get, you know, potentially, if you believe to say that, you know, potentially it can get harder. And with the best will in the world, you know, everyone at 90 years old is going to be saggier than they are today.
So on that positive note,
right. So you want to find someone who's not going to be like, well, I do love you, but you don't look the way you did when we first met. You know, screw that. If somebody loves you, they love you. End of discussion. So the reframe for me is always like, no. Whatever you're at right now, that's where you should meet someone. End of. Obviously, my personal philosophy about, you know, losing weight and all that nonsense. I think if your essence, it doesn't matter what you look like. So it doesn't matter how fit you are to someone else. And if it does, maybe that's not the right person for you, right? It should matter how fit they are to themselves, not how fit you are. So there you go. So reframes, just again, loosening somebody's grip on something or the way that they're viewing it, seeing it from another point of view. One client said, oh, I'm in the right, my partner is in the wrong. And I said, oh, it's really interesting that your partner made you feel that, because there is a philosophy in NLP where people make you feel how they feel. So what if feeling completely insignificant is what your partner was feeling, and that's why they behaved that way? It was like, huh? And any reframe where you can expand that person's perception can shatter belief systems, literally just let go of a belief that they've had about someone, or this right, I'm right and the other person's wrong, that there's only one way to look at something. Reframes are way quicker than an intervention. And if you can get one, and if you've got the perfect one, then use it. But it takes a bit of practice. And so certainly at Master Prac, we're going to be doing an entire module on reframes. And if you can think gymnastically, the reframes come really quickly. You don't need necessarily life experience or philosophies and things like that to call on, although you can. The reframe is just, well, another way to think about it, well, another way to think about it, another way to look at it, another way to look at it, and it comes really naturally. And there are also structures of reframes. What are do you remember what the two structures are that you looked at Prac? I'm just writing them. I know. Do you remember what they are?
I don't know.
Context and content reframes. Does that ring a bell?
No.
You did the poo exercise, am I right? Do you remember the poo, turd, shit?
Oh yes. Yep.
How could you forget that one?
Yeah.
Often people lose why they're sitting there talking about lots of different words for poo, but they're all. It's basically the basic premise of the exercise is you take one thing and call it a different name, and suddenly the way you feel about it differs, right? So you change the name of the content to something else. Is it shit or is it fertilizer? Suddenly fertilizer, oh yeah, I don't mind that, obviously. Is it a problem or is it a challenge? Is it a problem or is it an opportunity? There's a way to least favourite reframes. we have an opportunity. So that's lots of reframes. Take the same thing, call it something else. Yeah. Context is where you take the poo, turd, crap, whatever you want to call it, and then put it in a different location, and the location makes it okay.
So you wouldn't mind it in a field, but you don't really want it in your sandwich.
That's right, and it's not the thing's fault, is it? Right? It's not poo's fault where it is. So that's really helpful when someone says, well, I get angry. Great. Lots of people really struggle to get angry and would love to be able to express that level of passion. It's probably not very helpful to get angry at family members and people that love you or colleagues, but I bet it is super important and helpful to get angry when your boundaries are pushed and you need to change something in your life, because anger gives you the energy to change it. That's what it's for. It's great in uprisings and creating shifts in huge ways, and for knowing that internal flag that says, hey, somebody just stepped on me, somebody stepped on a boundary, broke a rule. Good. Anger is resourceful in those times. So nothing wrong with anger, just where you're using it and how you're expressing it, perhaps that's an issue. So those are the two reframes you looked at practitioner level. We'll have 16 more for you in module 1. So lots of different ways to shift something. All right. You usually look at reframing as a way, either in conversation to quickly change something, or not, with rapport, right? With rapport. Or as part of the loosening of somebody's model. But it's always done as a pace and lead. So you've always got to see it from the way they're seeing it first and empathise with it and build that rapport, and then kind of invite other perspectives, using kind of, possibly, and, could be, rather than I disagree. And that's a good reframe. Any others? Obviously phobia cure, but you don't tend to have a lot of time on that.
You mentioned Milton model earlier.
Yeah.
I always think of Milton model and meta model together.
Yeah.
I think I get them confused because I always think of one as chunking up and one as chunking down, but that isn't right, is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay, I can't remember which one's which then.
Right. Okay. Well, they're the inverse of each other for the most part. They're the same construct. One is being done intentionally, and the other one you're listening out for to be able to challenge that somebody's done it. So the purpose of Milton model is to intentionally make deletions, distortions, and generalizations to pace and lead somebody, reframe, to a different model of the world. So you pace their current experience using the structures like mind read. I know you have questions, what's performative, and that's great that you have questions. Tag question, isn't it? I mean, having questions means your mind is open, and surely a mind that's open works better than a mind that's closed, doesn't it? So if your mind's already open and you're here and sitting in front of me and listening and learning, then it's just a matter of time before you get what it is that you need, isn't it? So with the Milton model, you pace, sure, awful situation, yeah, totally. And that's actually great when you think about it, because, and then complex equivalence, and then all these other structures too, right? And it's a reframe. It's just the mechanisms of getting there. It's the mechanisms of helping somebody reframe without actually having to do it in ways of kind of, well, I suppose that's one way to think about it, hun, but you could look at it this way, which is very obvious and conscious and could meet with resistance because we're inviting them to look at it a different way. Whereas with Milton, we're not looking at it a different way. We're agreeing with them and building on it until they see it in a more empowered way. So that's Milton model. Then meta model, and again, it's supposed to be empowering for the client, not disempowering. And then with meta model, because we make these deletions, distortions, and generalizations in our language all the time, without realizing that we're doing it. How do you know I'm not? How do you know I don't realize I'm doing it? Those are the questions that we then have to challenge and wake somebody up from those Milton model phrases they're using on them in their own life all the time or in their own language. So, oh, well, I know she's only calling me because she feels guilty. That's the equivalent of, I know you have questions. It's a mind read. But it's done as a when the client uses it in a disempowering way, because they think they already know something, and then they're now not open to a different perspective. So with meta model, we end up with this beautiful structure of questions that we directly challenge. So rather than pace and lead like Milton model, so if, let's say the client says, oh, well, I know she only called me because she feels guilty. You could pace and lead that with Milton very elegantly without them really thinking about it. You're like, oh, I know, it always feels so bad, doesn't it, when you think somebody's only called you out of guilt. And yet when you think about the fact that they did call you, and then you can kind of go on a bit of a kind of journey. So, I guess, and then when you finish with something along the lines of, so I guess, any line of communication is at least an opportunity for staying connected, or an intention to stay connected, which is the important thing, isn't it? Rather than, well, you could look at it that way. How do you know that that's what that person's thinking? So the meta model is intentionally jarring. It's designed to wake somebody up and have them conscious of what they're saying. So it has to be done with rapport, or without rapport, just to be awkward. Like you can just, well, how do you know that? How do you know that that's why she called you? We'll always catch more flies with honey, though. So if we can use the rapport, and with rapport and gentleness, you'll probably get better results. Yeah. So even with the meta model, it does wake them up. How do you know that she did that? Yeah. Who says that it has to be this way? How does that mean that? How does that cause that? I don't understand. Just innocent questions that wake somebody up. Does that make sense a bit now? Which one's which? Yeah. Again, all of these we will practice again at master practice. So you will have another opportunity to kind of practice learning these and utilizing them, and then we just use them all the way through. So you kind of see them enough times that you can't help but recognize them. And quite often people don't remember the name but they're using it.
Yeah.
They recognize it when they see it, or when they see me use it, they'll giggle because they can see what I'm doing or whatever, but they don't know what the word is. You don't need to know what the word is until you teach it. So it really doesn't matter as long as there's way to communicate between us. You don't need to know the word for it. All right. Well, let's look at that as our set of techniques: perceptual positions, release negative emotions timeline, and release limiting decision timeline. Parts integration, anchoring, collapsing anchors, submodality. I won't put swish on there because you don't spend a lot of time on it at prac, and I think we tend to use it as a master prac technique, so we'll come back to that another time. So are they looking a little bit more obvious at the moment as to identifying, the what they're for? So let's think about the two most common choices that you might make, because Milton model and meta model, all the conversational and the reframes, they can all happen before you do anything, right? Meta model is useful for actually getting to the bottom of something, like just so that you can actually clearly understand what's going on. And then you can use Milton model to kind of loosen and reframe a few and see if anything sticks, what resistance there might be to that. It's ultimately when you're going to do an intervention that you have to think, right, what is the best intervention that I could do at this point that would ideally create generative change? So did you watch I think it was the first or second, the second master development track session where we talked about kind of remedial versus generative shifts and changes? Do you remember what those are? So this will be the difference. So at practitioner, there's often a focus more on remedial. There's the problem, here's a solution. At master prac, we're thinking more about generative change. So we're thinking about, okay, what is the smallest amount of work that we could do that would create a total shift in this person's experience? So if somebody has an issue with their boss, you could do perceptual positions to deal with that person's boss until they like that person, or they can get on with that person, or they see that person differently. And that's remedial, there's a problem that's resolved. If after further questioning it turns out that the reason they're so triggered by this individual is because of they remind them of a parent or a teacher at school, and it's it's kind of legacy, it's like, oh yeah, people that do that, they always trigger me in that way. Suddenly we have a pattern, and the moment that we have a pattern, we have a choice between, do we just do the issue that they've mentioned today with their boss, or do we take the whole pattern out and free them of the possibility this is coming back? And that's generative change. And that for us at Master Prac is why people would pay more money to come to see you as a Master Prac, because you'd be looking for how to get a breakthrough, how to shift something more deeply in that person's life so that it wouldn't come back again.
So it's a lot more powerful.
It can be very powerful, yeah, to take. And do you know what's really powerful is even just asking the question, Pete. So I was interviewing to be a coach for was it Mercedes? I think one of the people in Mercedes, and feeling at the time I was, it was like, oh, I'm excited. I went to this meeting kind of like, okay, well, let's see what happens. Because I knew I was up against a lot of people that were executive coaches and people that had like, these sorts of grand LinkedIn profiles and things like that, and were probably more expensive than me at the time. And I thought, well, I've been recommended from somebody, so that's probably why I've got my foot through the door. And I went in and I sat with this person. And I said, so, what is it that you're hoping to do with, for what reason do you want to coach? Anyway, and she said, well, I've got a problem with my boss. I find them very passive aggressive. And I find it very wearing. I find it quite, stressful. I don't really know. And I want some, and this is always what gets me. I just want some, practical things I can do and tools to be able to manage them. And this is what a lack of breakthrough coaching in the corporate world drives people to expect, that the best they're going to get is management of something instead of solution, right? So I said, okay, cool, tell me about what this person does. And I said, oh, great, who do they remind you of from childhood? That was the only question that I asked, really. And literally, it's just like you could see these sort of neurons suddenly connecting two parts of this person's kind of psyche together. And it was just like, oh my God, of course that's who they remind me of. And I said, I'm guessing that you didn't have the resources to deal with that person either, right? And that you felt very helpless and all those other things that she mentioned. You felt like that then. And like, yes, great. So unless we take out, this pattern, you might end up with some great tools to deal with this individual, but it's just going to come back somewhere else. So why don't we just take out the whole pattern? And of course, obviously nobody else had had those conversations with her, right? Because who dares ask somebody about their childhood in a corporate interview when, you know what I mean? It was like, well, how else would I help you? And of course, a lot of people are put off by the idea that, suddenly they're going to have to talk about their childhood, but they don't. They absolutely don't. We're talking about your subconscious mind. We're talking about a database at the end of the day where you've stored a feeling of helplessness and frustration and anger where there shouldn't be one. And if you didn't feel those debilitating feelings, you'd feel neutral, and then your cerebral cortex would kick in and know how to deal with it because you're a wise person and you'd be able to figure it out as a grown-up. It's only because you're experiencing these, this flashback to these feelings of being a child that you cannot access your greatness from that space. And that's a wiring issue, right? As far as I'm concerned, that's not a therapy issue, that's just wiring. So generative change for me is why that is so powerful. And I now obviously unapologetically ask those sorts of questions of people. So that's where something like perceptual positions, nothing wrong with it. It's been life-changing for me every time I've used it. You will learn something about yourself every time you use it. You may choose, if you wanted to get generative change, to deal with the blueprint, that person and who they represent. Is there a pattern here? If so, then probably release negative emotion on a timeline. When would you do a collapsing anchors versus release negative emotion? So both are about neutralizing how you feel about something. Why would you think, okay, I'll definitely do release negative emotion as opposed to collapsing anchors? Let the cat out while you think.
Is it again a question of how far back that goes? That a collapsing anchor might be quite a specific thing, quite isolated maybe, whereas doing a timeline might be something, again, there's a pattern, it's repeated, it maybe goes a bit deeper.
Yes. So definitely, obviously, if it's a pattern, timeline will knock out the pattern, and collapsing anchors will deal with the situation in front of you. If that person is collapsing anchors on, I don't know, let's say a presentation, but they've mentioned they always get stressed out by a presentation, then we're in the same boat again. We're kind of like, okay, well, we can collapse anchors on this one. It's just going to happen next time as well. So that's okay. That's still okay, because if neurologically, if you do it enough times on every situation that occurs, eventually you'll retrain your nervous system to feel differently, for sure. You've come to pressure the issue, have you? You want to go out. So yeah, so you might choose to do collapsing anchors. Oh, Dexy. You might choose to do collapsing anchors on a client who's very reticent to go back in time. Does that follow? Even though you know, release negative emotion, that's what you need, that's what would make all of this disappear. It would be so good for you. Some clients will refuse point blank to talk about the past.
You need a higher level of trust to go that deep.
And it doesn't even have to be trust in you. It literally can be just not resources in self, but that trust in themselves, that they'll be able to handle it. I'm just going to let him out before he rips the door off the hinges. There you go. There you go. Yes, it's not always you. They're kind of like, oh, I know you're all right. But it's not safe, regardless of how lovely you are or how good you are. It's not something I want to, or God knows what Pandora's box it would open, or what other beliefs they've got. And it just might, with that trust, if they've got trust in you, it might just be a case of conversationally loosening something, or doing enough collapsing anchors that the edge is off. And then suddenly you can even just talk about, well, so where do you think it comes from then? Do you have a sense of where it comes from in a conversation? And the difference at the master prac is that you could have that as a conversational change, even without an intervention. So you could, in conversation, get the learnings without actually kind of, right, let's go back to that event. So it's not beyond possibility, but yeah, just for me, if a client's just like, no, I'm not going there, end of, great, do enough collapsing anchors and you'll take the edge off eventually, most likely. Cool, okay. And what other one is there? Yeah, we talked about limiting decision and parts integration. So I want to do this, but probably limiting decision. I want to do this and I want to do this. Probably parts conflict. Yeah.
It's so helpful, Jess, to go through them all together, because it starts to feel like you can make the connections. And it's quite interesting to go through the whole practitioner in an evening. I mean, I know not in as much depth, but to cover all of it and start to see where the deeper work can happen, where you can do things in smaller stages. It's been really, really interesting to see it as a whole.
Brilliant. Well, I will put it all together now, because I know we normally do a 2-hour session on Thursday. I'll put it all together now for you with the following. Super, super straightforward. That's the third page.
So you mentioned things like the Milton and Meta model, Jess, that would just really come into conversation. But I think we did a whole part on listening to the words that people say and what we read into it as well. Yes. I mean, the more you experience language, the more you become conscious of it. And again, that's part of what you will get from the master pack, is just lots of consciousness of people's language and why they're choosing the word they're choosing. Is suddenly you don't really, it's not really an intervention at that point. It's just the way you look at everything, and what you, rather than listening with your own map of the world, you start listening and really understanding what they're saying. And I think one of some of the arguments with my family, for example, one of the arguments I had with my mum, probably the biggest argument that we had, was the argument over a choice of words in a text. Like, and it was literally like, she said, "Oh, I can't come to your wedding. I've booked a holiday." And I was like, "That's awful." And she said, "Well, I'll cancel it if you want me to." And I said that the presupposition of "I'll cancel it if you want me to," right, could be construed as you don't want to cancel the holiday, but you will if I want you to.
And I just tried, and it was this kind of silly argument that I was trying to explain to her, but I want you to want to cancel it. I want you to want to come to my wedding. I don't want you to come to my wedding because out of guilt, that you think, well, because just because I want you to. So we had this, I got really cross with her because it was like, no, I want you to want to come to my wedding. And she's like, but I already said I'd cancel it if you want me to. So of course, cross communication, but being able to see in people's language can be the choice of people's language, the choice of their words is usually subconscious, right? It usually is. So when you're very good at reading it, like, okay, what's the presupposition of that structure, you understand it, you do see what people are actually thinking. It doesn't help in its own. There was more techniques that I had to do, right? So I did a perceptual positions on my mum at the time. And what I realised is that was the thing that clinched. I think I did that on one of the master packs, actually, or one of the packs, I can't remember. But I did that. And what I realised was the reason that she was saying, I'll cancel it if you want me to, is my mother's top value was being needed. So in her mind, it was like, I'm very scared to travel across, to Italy and come to your wedding and be around all those people I don't know. And it's a big deal for me. But I'll do it if you need me. Because then she would have found immediate courage. She's the mother that would fly into a burning building to save her children, right? She is that woman. Help them cook a meal? No. But if you were somehow in need, suddenly she would find courage, she would find motivation, and then it would be easy for her to do it. So although the linguistic structure I could see presupposed, I don't want to, my beef was that she didn't want to. What I didn't see until I did the perceptual positions was it was her way of saying, if you tell me that you need me to be there, I will find all of this courage and then I'll be able to come. It was like her secret way of kind of saying, please tell me I'm needed, please do it, and then I can find the magic. So it's never as simple as that's what the client said, therefore. It's why they said it. The positive intention behind what they said. The positive intention behind what they said. So using the other techniques can also then help to figure that out. So linguistics is really about, when you're listening, it's about working out what they've said. Why they've said it, you have to do a bit more work. You have to get to the positive intention. All right. So this is the last little thing I just want to cover, because I think it will help. Because Annabelle, you were on the session the other night, and I think it was kind of very quickly. It was like, yeah, just go for it. Remove a limiting, release negative emotion, and then the trick is at that point, everybody launches in to the technique. At Master Prac, we go a little bit. We make it a bit easier for you. So what you need at that point, when you think I'm going to do a parts integration, when you think you're going to do a release negative emotion, when you think you're going to do anything, you ask for 3 examples. Now you could just say to anyone, have you got a problem in your life? Great, give me 3 examples of it. And at the end of those 3 examples, you've probably figured out what they need. Because three events usually kind of form some kind of a line, kind of form a pattern. But just say, right, give me 3 examples of where that emotion comes up for you. So event 1, maybe a week ago. Event 2, yesterday. And event 3, a year ago. Yeah, you don't need one from childhood or anything. So get 3 events. You get more than that, great, but 3 minimum. Yeah. Then go through the technique, and then your test is, now when you think about event 1, how is it different now? Now when you think about event 2, how is it different now? Now when you think about event 3, how is it different now? And so on. Make sense? So you've got, so you've got 3 events, not only to help you work out what the actual pattern is, most likely from that they're actually wanting to work on. So, okay, I get sadness, but give me 3 examples of when you get sadness. From that, you might be able to really kind of go, okay, so is it every time this happens then? And they're like, oh, yeah, it is. And they might not have noticed it. Like the root of it. When you tested, now when you think about event 1, how is it different? There shouldn't be any emotion, obviously. They should have applied the learnings and not feel any unpleasant emotions in it. The reason that we do at least 3 is because when we look at meta programs in module 1, module 2, most people have what we call a convincer strategy that requires at least 3 examples to be convinced of something. So if you've got a convincer strategy and we say, right, how many times do you need to see, hear, or experience something to know that it's real, that it's true? A lot of people will have a 3-time convincer. First time I see it, well, that could be a fluke, couldn't it? Second time, oh yeah, okay, it's looking like a pattern. Third time, yeah, that's definitely a fact. Yeah. So we use the rule of 3 because then when the client comes back after their technique, they do feel differently, but they don't know it's changed. So after you've checked those same 3 events with them that literally minutes ago they could tell you were unpleasant, they are now convinced it is different rather than just one example. That is massively important. The next thing is future pace. Now in timeline, it's literally, I want you to go out to an unspecified time in the future where if it had happened in the past, you would have felt unwarranted amounts of X, Y, Z. But notice now in the future that you cannot. Right? It's very vague intentionally, right? But that's one thing. It's one example. It's not enough. So we recommend that either at the beginning, you say, give me some examples of things that could happen in the future that at the moment you would be worried if same thing would happen. They haven't happened, but you'd be worried that they would in the future. So concrete examples, my birthday's coming up, or, I'm moving jobs next year, things that are concrete examples that are coming up that currently would be tainted by this issue. Yeah. Then, okay, now when you think about going into work and you're meeting all those new people, how does it feel? And then you want them to be oh my God, I feel totally different 3 times. And now you future paced it 3 times. I'll write that down. Okay. So times 3. Another way you could future pace is literally by having them kind of walk the timeline a week, a month, a year down the line, 5 years down the line. How is your life different as a result of this having changed? So depending on what that person's convincer is, because if their convincer is, it doesn't matter how many times I see it, I need to see it for a year before I'm convinced, that's how long you future pace for. Yeah, so we will add that in at Master Prep. But this first one, the testing, get 3 events every time, get 3 events, get 3 examples. It is wonderful to get that immediate confirmation at the end that it has actually worked. Right? That's the minimum. Future pacing, obviously, is important, but you want to at least get a good test that it's worked. Make sense? All right. So, what have we got next? Next Tuesday is, what's next Tuesday? Masterclass, isn't it? Next Tuesday. Oh yes, we've got Instagram Reels masterclass. I think next Tuesday. I think. Oh no, I can't remember if you can do that date. I think we've got, maybe that's in May. Yes, it's in May. Oh. We've got something else. I can't remember what it is. But whoever does the masterclass will whatever it is that we do a masterclass on, we'll add in this testing. So whatever problem you think about, if you've got a problem right now and I say, great, give me 3 examples of it. Can you see how much easier that is as a coach? Do you have to do meta model? You don't have to do anything. Just give me 3 examples of where it happens. And from that, you've suddenly got a real sense of, okay, what's the pattern between those 3? What's similar between, spot the difference kind of game then. All right. Well done.
I feel quite privileged to have you with such a small group tonight.
I don't know. Since lockdown, obviously we were inundated with evening, because people weren't stressing out in the day; they were chilling at home. We had loads of people in the evening sessions, but I think people have gone back to their busy lives now. So, yes, numbers have reduced somewhat. Bless you, but it's a late night, so thank you for coming along, and I really hope that it has been a lot, but condensed, to sort of, like, say, connecting the dots a bit.
Is it possible, Jess, for you to share those notes that you've made with us?
Of course, yes, absolutely, I will do.
That'd be brilliant.
I'll probably make sure the spelling is accurate before I post it, but yeah, I will do. I'll post it probably with the recording rather than on its own randomly.
That'd be brilliant. It's a really good kind of crib sheet to kind of get it in the front of our minds, ready for. Yes. Is it this? It's this month, isn't it? The first weekend.
Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. So the 23rd and 24th is just refresh the prac skills, which is why we haven't really done that on this development track, because then some people would be refreshed and then other people wouldn't. So it's really a refresh, but it's a deepener. So we won't take all of these techniques. We will take the ones that you're going to use. So we will take timeline, we will take parts integration, we will take collapsing anchors. Those are the 3 definite ones. And perceptual positions takes a really long time. There's very rarely anybody that didn't get it in their course. But we do use it in re-imprinting in module 2. So we already kind of go through it again in the course. So yeah, we'll take the big ones, the big hitters, and then go deep dive into them and make sure you get lots of practice, especially with this 3, seeing how easy it is with, okay, whatever the problem is, give me 3 examples of it where it shows up, and then seeing how quickly you can get to an intervention from that. Awesome. Okay, so you guys are definitely on the master track. Inevitably there will be late joiners. I'm sure we have 10 at this point, so we'll probably get a few more. We always kind of set out before we get there, so we just never know where people are going to come from at the last minute, and they fly in and swoop in and do it. So brilliant. All right, so I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more on the course, and what you become. If as far as I'm aware, you could be world-class breakthrough coaches already. Let's assume so. you're just going to be qualified master practitioner versions of those by the end. And I'll see you. There's one more of these in a couple of weeks. Not quite sure what's covered on that one yet, but I'll post about it and let you know. And and I'll see you hopefully in 2 weeks, if not on the 23rd and 24th.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks,
Thanks for your
Jess.
time again, Jess.
Thank you.
Bye,
Have a nice
everyone.
evening.
There you go.